What's going on, nerds? Welcome back to another episode of the Comic Book Nerd Nation. I'm Fox2. Today we're here with Topher,
What's up, everybody?
the whole effing Brian,
Howdy.
the Pirate,
Hey, guys.
and today we've got a really special episode for you guys. We have a special guest. He has won a ton of awards for his work in the comics world. Most currently, I believe he's working on Avatar: Last Airbender. Writer Luen Yang.
Hi guys, thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Did I pronounce that right?
You absolutely did. I know. The middle name is like I actually didn't when I started in comics I didn't use it. I didn't really use it, and then my editor, for a second, my publisher now, really wanted my name to be longer because he thought it looked better on the cover, and ever since then I've been using my middle name.
I've been kind of fretting it a little bit all day, like, man, I'm gonna say this just a little bit wrong, and it's gonna be like offensive or something.
No, you did great.
Okay, well let's jump right in and start talking comics and stuff. The one thing that really stands out to me that I was really curious to hear about is, as I was, doing my due diligence and reading up on you a little bit, I came across the fact that it looks like you're a really big advocate for the usage of graphic novels and comic books for educational purposes. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. For well over a decade, I taught high school computer science at a high school in Oakland. And all the way through, I've just been very passionate about both of these things, about comic books and about education. When I first started in the classroom, I tried to bring them together by actually telling my students on the very first day of class that I was also a cartoonist. I thought it'd make me cool in their eyes. And it absolutely did not. Backfired. They would just kind of give me these blank stares when I told them, "Oh, I make comics too. I'm not just a teacher." And then a few months later, when the materials started getting hard, they would raise their hands and start asking me these questions about comics. Right? Not because they were interested, but because
they didn't want to talk about the topic.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So pretty quickly, within a couple of years of teaching, I realized I need to keep these two worlds separate. After a few years of teaching, though, they kind of came back together in this really weird way. I was working as the school's educational technologist at the time, which meant that I would help other teachers integrate computer technology into their classrooms. And then one day my administration came up to me and they said that one of my colleagues in the math department was going to go on long-term leave, and they asked me to sub for this class, this Algebra 2 class. Well, because I was this educational technologist, that meant that, every couple of weeks I would have to be out of that Algebra 2 class because I would be helping some other teacher with computer stuff in their classroom. So this Algebra 2 class, would have to have a sub for their sub, which is like the worst educational environment you can have for kids. I felt really sad for them. So, so I tried to make up for my absence from that class by videotaping my lectures, and I'd ask my sub to play them. And that was a disaster. My students would come up to me and they'd say things like, Mr. Yang, we thought you were boring in person, but on video, you're just absolutely unbearable. So as a second try, as like a desperate second attempt, I started illustrating these lessons as like my lectures that I was going to do as comics, and I'd do them really fast. I'd just do them with the Sharpie. Each lesson would end up anywhere between 4 and 6 pages long. I'd Xerox them, and I'd ask my sub to hand them out to my students. And much to my surprise, this was actually a huge success. Students would actually come up to me and they say, even when we're here, we want you to do these comics because we prefer you in cartoon form. And that was what really intrigued me about bringing these two worlds together, bringing education and comics together. I just think comics is an untapped resource for educators right now. There are all sorts of things that make comics appropriate to the classroom. This is something that came up in my conversations with my students. One is that it conveys information in a visual way, and our students are really, really used to taking in visual information. And then the second thing is that, comics, unlike other visual storytelling media, unlike animation and video and film, with comics, you're getting visual information, but you're getting it in a way where past, present, and future all kind of sit side by side. So the rate of information transfer is actually based on what the reader wants as opposed to what the creator wants. So for my students, the reason why they hated those video lectures was that they couldn't slow me down. I would just give the lecture and that would be it. Whereas when I was in comics form, when I was a cartoon character sitting on a page, they could read my words as quickly or slowly as they wanted to. And that was really helpful to them.
Yeah, they always say that different people learn in different ways too, and some people are auditory learners, some people are visual. Having pictures to go along with that, I feel like that would really help, different people remember things better.
Yeah, I think that's really true. Especially within that Algebra 2 class, one of the topics that I had to cover was factoring. Do you remember what that was? That's where you break up
of course.
yeah, where you break up a number into its prime factors, and that's a very visual task, that we teach our students to do. You draw this little tree, and you really need to see it play out in sequence in order to understand it.
Now, when you drew these comics or lesson plans, I guess, in comic form, did you like jazz it up and make you look like a superhero type of thing, or was it just a straightforward like?
No, I was trying to get them done fast.
Oh, okay. Well, I didn't know if you threw the cape on there.
I made me look. Yeah, I didn't make myself a superhero. I just drew a really simplified cartoon version of me.
Now, I've seen that you on your website you actually have factoring with Mr. Yang and Mosley the Alien. Are those right? Like the original? Are those the original ones from that class, or did you?
Well, no, actually,
spice it up a bit to create the Flash thing, or?
Yeah, those are definitely spiced up versions of my original comic. So I was working on a master's in education at the time. And originally, I was planning on doing my final project for this master's on computers in education. But this experience of using comics in my classroom was it was so fascinating to me that I decided to switch my final topic. So that webcomic that you found online is a more sophisticated version of the webcomics that I drew, or the paper comics that I drew for my class.
So for those of you that are not familiar with the projects and the work that goes behind focusing your masters, if you're listening to this, that's a significant decision. It's not like I was going to wear a green shirt today, but I think I'll wear a black shirt today. This is a very, very significant change. So for you to make that decision, it had to be something you were obviously, and you can hear it in your voice when you talk about it. You're very, very passionate about how this can benefit the youth of the world potentially, I guess.
Yeah, well, I think in other countries they're already doing this, right? And in other especially in Asia and Japan and Korea, educational comics are a huge subsection of their comics market. It's only in America that we're just trying to figure it out.
Really? I didn't know that. So where are you, or we as a country, if you will, with the whole progression of, where does the battle to get this legs and take off? Where are we at with that?
I think there have been huge changes in the last 5 to 10 years. Part of it is just I think American culture in general is starting to take comics seriously. We now see reviews of comic books and graphic novels in Time magazine and in the New York Times, whereas in the mid 90s that was you would never even dream of it, right? and that has led to books like Mouse and Persepolis being adopted in classrooms from junior high to high school to college.
That's so awesome.
I think it's awesome.
I'm almost speechless because I think back to my experiences with substitute teachers in high school, and it's just like
party time.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of, exactly. It's one of two things. It's either like I don't care because this guy is so awful that I just don't want to pay attention, or B, it's just, they're going to be super strict and it's boring, flat out boring. And, either way, you're really not learning too much.
I always hope for a movie day.
Yeah, I remember when we had substitutes, we would always like try and trick them about where we really were. Oh no, we haven't gotten to that yet, so then we'd go back and redo an old lesson that we already knew, so we could look smarter and not have to like do any work that day. I can't even imagine a substitute of a substitute. What we try and put over on
Yeah.
them.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, subbing is one of the worst parts of teaching, man. The people who have to do it more regularly than I did, I really admire for their patience.
Do you still teach or?
I still work at that school where I used to teach. I now just do some computer stuff for them on a part-time basis, and I teach through Hamlin University now, which is a university in Minnesota. I teach through an online MFA program in creative writing. And that's all, it's online, so it's mostly on the internet. I fly out to Minnesota for about a week every year to meet my students and to hang out with the other faculty. And then throughout the course of the school year, I'm generally interacting through email with my students.
Are they all on campus? Are the students are all on campus or?
No, they're all over. It's called
okay.
it's a low residency program. So we
I
have
gotcha.
students, our student the student who came farthest was from Australia.
Wow, that's not exactly around the block.
No, it is not around the block. Yeah, she was very dedicated. I very
Yeah,
much
wow.
admire her.
That's insane. Brian, did you have something?
Yeah, I'm a bit interested in your work with Avatar: The Last Bender. I mean, both your books, your work with Avatar: The Last Airbender takes place during the time period between The Last Airbender and Korra. Is there a lot of work that has to go into trying to bridge that gap from something that's already established to that potential future with Korra?
Yeah, sure. I mean, part of the work is I have to watch these shows over and over again, which is kind of awesome.
Yeah, that doesn't suck. I want that as a job. I want that job. Sign me up.
Yeah, I get to say that to my wife, right? I'll be sitting in front of the TV watching the latest Korra episode, and she'll
Quiet,
go, "Come
I'm
on,
working."
help me." Yeah, exactly. I'll say I'm working right now.
Let me know if you need an assistant.
Yeah.
I will gladly sit down and watch
Right.
some of that.
Yeah, that part is awesome. So I was brought into a pre-existing world, right? I had nothing to do with the animated shows at all. And Mike DiMartino and Brian Konietzko, the creators of the original show, they had kind of figured out a rough history of this world when they started on Korra. So when they brought me on, all the bones of these 70 years between the end of the first show and the beginning of the second had been figured out already. And in that way, it was kind of comforting. It was kind of comforting to know that the big pieces were all already there. So I'm really part of a team on this. Every single script that I write, every outline that I do is read by either Mike or Brian, and I get feedback from them. I also get feedback from a team of editors at Nickelodeon and at Dark Horse. So because of that, I think it makes it a little bit easier. I'm in this very rich world, and I'm working with a pretty good team to build these comics.
That's pretty neat that the show writers are that involved. Do they ever try and work in things into Legend of Korra that are results of some of your plot points from the graphic novels?
I have not heard of that yet. Generally, I mean, it works the other way, right? They'll
Right.
describe to me the upcoming season of Korra. Usually, I'll get just a few pieces of information that aren't out there in the public, and I'll try to write to those things. So, for instance, in this for the search, I knew that the second season of Legend of Korra was going to be pretty focused on the spirit world, so we built in a lot of spirit world elements into search.
So these are almost like, you could almost consider it like a supplemental reading, the way that you guys are writing it, as far as, basing it on the, they come up with the plot lines or the broad strokes of the Korra episodes, give that to you, and then you can kind of come up with the supplemental meat, if you will, to go with the bone structure that they're laying down.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so it's a pretty broad outline. I feel like I still get a decent amount of creative elbow room when I'm working on these things. So like the big pieces are figured out. We know that Aang and Katara are going to get married and they're going to have these kids. We know that Zuko is going to be Fire Lord for X number of years. We know that Toph is going to have a daughter who grows up to be a police chief. But within that framework, I feel like I still get enough elbow room that I can explore what really deeply interests me about this world.
Had you seen the original show before getting involved in writing these?
I did actually. The way I got this job was I was a huge fan of that original show. I actually first heard about this original show in my classroom. My students would talk about it when they were supposed to be working on their projects, and they'd sit there and they'd debate. Who do you think Qatar is going to end up with, or who do you think is going to be Aang's earthbending teacher? They talk about this stuff, and I wanted to ask them about it because it sounded really interesting, but because I was a teacher, I couldn't. I just had to say, "Shut up and get to work," and then a few months later, a friend of mine, Derek Kirk Kim, I don't know if you're familiar with his work, but he's a cartoonist as well. He did a book called Same Difference that got all these awards in 2003 when it came out. But he loaned me the first season on DVD. And I think by the third or fourth episode, I was absolutely hooked.
Just
on this. Yeah, I mean, it's great. My wife
too.
was hooked too. Yeah, that was the surprising thing is my wife generally doesn't like animation. She prefers live action stuff. But she was hooked right along with me. It'd be like 1 o'clock in the morning, and she would be the one that would go, "Let's just do one more episode, okay?"
It's such a deeply rich storyline with so many branches and so interweaving that it's. I honestly, I don't think I've ever talked to anybody that either likes comic books, cartoons, or even movies for that matter, anime, any of that stuff, that has seen it and not absolutely loved it. It's not like I've never heard of anybody being like, it's okay. It's always like I either don't like it or oh my god, it's awesome.
It's amazing. Yeah. It's kind of shocking, honestly, that it came from Nickelodeon.
Yeah, I remember when I first heard about it. I used to be into anime a lot, and Nickelodeon was always, Western animation has always been so much more juvenile normally. And I remember I heard about it, and I was like, oh, isn't that on Nickelodeon? And somebody was like, no, it's really good. You got to watch it. And I'm like, really, really good. And like those, those silly cartoons where they're kind of fun to watch, but you're not really getting anything out of them. And then I watched a few, and it was the same thing. I'm pretty sure I stayed up all night and watched the entire first season in one go.
There's a lot of culture put into it.
There's so much.
You can tell, you can feel the research that they did, right? Even though it's a fantasy world, it's built on all of these real world cultures and these real world artifacts, and you can feel it as you're watching it.
And the martial arts too, the way they style each one after a different actual martial art form, I thought was really neat.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. Last year at Comic-Con, I met Toph. For Toph, they wanted to choose this very specialized martial arts form, right? They wanted to be unlike any of the other martial arts that were represented in the show because Toph is such a unique character because she basically learned how to bend on her own, with the help of some badger moles. So they had the dude. They searched all over for some dude with like a really unique style of martial arts, of kung fu, and they finally found him, and they brought him in at an Avatar fan panel during Comic-Con last year, and he's like this big dude. He's like big in every way a person can be big. It's kind of crazy, right? and you see him, and you think he's like the least likely person to be like Toph. But then when he starts performing his moves, you recognize all of them. It's like this weird mind thing when you watch him do it.
And then the rocks start flying up in the air.
Yeah, that's crazy. Exactly what happened right in the middle of the convention center. but anyway, so I became a fan of the show, and when they announced the live action movie, I was super excited about it at first because I thought it was going to be awesome.
I think
I think we're all on the same. I like how he said, "I thought it was going to be awesome."
Come on, all of us thought it was
foreshadowing.
I couldn't wait. I really couldn't wait.
Yeah.
And then it happened.
And then they announced that M. Night Shyamalan was going to direct it. I was a little bit less enthused because I thought, well, I liked his first 3 movies. Maybe this one will be good. And then when they announced the casting, that's when things kind of flipped for me. I went from being excited to kind of mad because to my mind, it was it was basically Yellowface, right? In especially now that I'm involved in the comics, I see all of the notes that are behind the show, and even though it's set in a fantasy world, it's built on these real world Asian and Inuit cultures, and it's really apparent, especially when you look at all the back end material, that the main characters are all supposed to be either Asian or Inuit. And when they gave those roles to white actors, I just thought, not only was it not true to the source material, but it was also part of this pattern of Yellowface, of Hollywood taking roles that would most logically go to Asian American actors and giving them to white actors. So this has been something that's been happening since the very beginning. So I was mad enough that I actually wrote and drew a webcomic about how I was going to boycott the movie, and I put that on the web, and it got this huge response. Like, it got tons and tons. Out of anything I've ever done on the web, that one got the most response. But one of the folks that read that webcomic was actually an editor at Dark Horse. So years later, when Dark Horse acquired the license to the Airbender comics, this editor called me up and offered me the writing gig.
Oh, you had to just be so overtaken.
Isn't that crazy?
With joy.
Yeah,
really cool.
It was so crazy. Well, I asked her, does it have to reference the movie in any way? And she's like, no. And I was like, yes,
Please don't.
I want to do it.
Yeah. Because if you say yes to that, I'm out.
Yeah,
Then you're fired.
That's right. That's right, but it's crazy, right? I mean, I got that job from complaining. I complained about something, and then years later, I got this crazy job.
I mean, it had to be from you showing passion about the true source material, which is what they were obviously wanting to go back to.
Yeah. I mean, Dark Horse is really good at. I mean, that's one of their strengths, right? Is adapting properties from other media into comics.
I remember when all the announcements were going on, and I held on and just grasped at every last straw of hope that, man, this movie has so much potential, it could be so awesome. And then that first trailer came out, and I just shuddered. Oh no.
I think it still has one of the absolute lowest ratings ever on Rotten Tomatoes.
Yeah, shocking, right?
I think it's like the worst movie of all time or something like that.
It was just as disappointing as the live-action Dragon Ball movie.
Yeah.
Oh gosh.
Oh, goodness. Pirate, do you have a question lined up?
Well, he actually answered my question about what his thoughts were on the Last Airbender movie. So, my big thing is, we interview a lot of artists and pencilers and stuff like that, but we don't really interview too many writers. I don't think that we've done. Which one do you prefer doing more than the other?
You mean which comic?
No, like
writing. No, as far as writing or drawing.
I see. Well, I think it really depends on the project. There's a trade-off there. So I haven't yet done a project where somebody else writes and I draw. So it's either projects where I do both, or it's a project where I'm writing and somebody else is drawing. So when I'm doing both, I think what I like about that is I have complete control over this project. Every single line that's on that paper is mine. Every single word that's on that paper is mine. And I feel like I can do something very personal and very intimate in that way. But then when I'm working with someone else, often it's on a project where I just don't have the drawing chops to pull it off. So for instance, for the Airbender comics, there's no way I can do what those artists do. I'm working with a Japanese studio called Guri Hiro, and they're absolutely amazing. I feel like their visual style both pulls from the original show and adds something new to it. I think they're really the perfect artists for that project. And I have another project coming out this summer called The Shadow Hero, which is my first superhero book, right? And it's being drawn by a guy named Sonny Liu. I don't know if you've ever heard of him, but he's done some work for Marvel and for DC, and he's phenomenal. He can pull off comedy and drama and superhero adventure. It's absolutely amazing. So that's the trade-off. So it's control, where I have complete control over something, versus bringing in somebody else's visual voice that can supplement my weaknesses.
Can you tell us anything about the upcoming project?
Oh yeah, I'm really excited about this project.
I'll pitch it. Selfless pitching. Go for it. Sell it.
Yeah. So Sonny and I are actually reviving this character from the golden age of American comics. You know, the golden age was like the 1940s. That's when comics became this mass medium, and that's when people were getting crazy rich on comics. You know, like the publishers of Superman and Batman, they just made tons and tons. They made like boatloads of money. So everybody wanted in. Everybody saw comics as a gold mine. So all these tiny little publishers just popped up out of nowhere, and they started throwing these characters out to the public because everybody was hoping to create the next Superman. In this environment, there was a Chinese American cartoonist named Chu Hing, and he was asked by his publisher to create a superhero. So he does. He creates this superhero called the Green Turtle. And if you look him up online, if you look up Green Turtle Golden Age, you'll find him, and you'll see he has like the goofiest costume ever. But the rumor is this. So there's a rumor surrounding the way Green Turtle was created. The rumor is that Chu, the creator, wanted the Green Turtle to be a Chinese American like he was. But his publisher wouldn't let him do it because his publisher thought that a Chinese American hero just wouldn't sell in the American in the American marketplace. So Chu reacts. I mean, he's a cartoonist, right? And the way we deal with adversity is we're just passive aggressive. So that's what he does. He reacts in this really passive aggressive way. He draws the Green Turtle so that, except for one instance, you never see his face. There's only one instance where you see his face. But for most of the comics that he does, the Green Turtle has his back turned towards you, you know? And then when he is turned around, something is blocking his face. It's either like a shadow or another character's head is right in the way. Something's blocking his face. And the rumor is that the Chu did this so that he could imagine his hero as he originally intended, as a Chinese American, you know?
That's kind of really clever.
Yeah, now you know he's a golden age hero. Like a lot of these golden age heroes, he's now in public domain. You know, the copyright laws back then were much different. So I think you had to renew like every 28 years, and by the time the 1960s rolled around, the publisher was long gone. Right. So he fell into public domain. Chu never told us his secret origin because the title was canceled before he ever did that. So it's never confirmed whether he actually is a Chinese American or not. Now, I found these original Green Turtle comics online. He was published in this series called Blazing Comics. And after I read them, I was just really intrigued. I was intrigued by the art style. I was intrigued by the composition that the compositions that Chu used for all the different panels, because you just don't ever see comics that are drawn like that. And I was also intrigued by all these rumors around his origin, right? So I thought that this would be a place that Sunny and I could fit in really well. The Shadow Hero, our graphic novel, is basically a secret origin that we made up for this public domain superhero from the 1940s.
That's kind of neat.
That's so awesome. So when is this going to be releasing?
It'll be in July. So right now it's actually releasing as digital issues through Kindle, and then July 1st, 2nd we'll be publishing the trade paperback.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm gonna have to check that out.
I was just looking up the some of the images from it. And I actually found your couple of, well, there's two images of it. One as he's got the cape on and the mask, and then another one where he's in plain clothes. It looks holding a broom, I think. The Shadow Hero number
that's
one.
Sunny Lu. Yeah, those are images drawn by Sunny Lu. Yeah.
Yeah, that looks really cool. I'm gonna have to.
Yeah,
you said it's available for Kindle right now?
It's available for Kindle right now as individual issues. So I think 3 of the 6 issues have released already. And then when the 6th one releases, that's when First Second's going to put out the print collection.
I'm always intrigued by the business aspects of comics. So, like, you know, you mentioned, you know, that he's public domain now. When you do new stories, like, does that I mean, how does that affect things? Like, you know, can other people also use the character and do stories like in your world now? Or, you know, I mean, like, can you still get to sell them as your own stories and everything, right? Like, how does the fact that he's public domain like affect your rights to the stories? Yeah,
I had to look this up. You know, I had to figure it out, and the thing that I learned is that it is crazy confusing. There's a reason why. But here's my understanding of it: is that when you use a public domain character, you know, like Cinderella, for instance, whatever you add on top of that character, you add on top of that original source material, can be copyrighted, but the copyright doesn't extend to the original.
Okay. So anything you add, okay.
Yeah. So for instance, if I wanted to retell the Cinderella story and I wanted to make her, I don't know, like a monkey, right? like a monkey Cinderella. Her monkeyish-ness I can copyright, but not her Cinderella-ness.
Wow,
I-
yeah, I can see where there are some very, very deep gray areas there.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
read
Yeah.
Monkey
But this
Cinderella,
is kind of
though.
a thing now, right? Like reviving public domain characters. Alex Ross has done a bunch of them for Dynamite. I don't know if you've seen any of those like his Masks series. I think that's made up.
Oh,
It's a
yeah.
super team that's made up entirely of public domain characters.
Oh wow.
Huh.
Yeah, yeah. One of them is Black Terror. I bet you've seen it at your local store.
Yeah, I think I have
Yeah.
seen that title. So, yeah.
Yeah, but Black Terror is used all over the place. Alan Moore used them in one of his comics just because he's public domain.
Right,
Alex
right.
Ross interpretation. There's a series from the '90s called Femme Force that had him in it.
Jeez.
It's kind of cool.
You're talking about the green turtle being an American Asian, kind of ties into a question that I wanted to ask you about, which was, and correct me if I'm wrong here, your Eisner Award-winning book, American Born Chinese.
Uh-huh.
Tell me, is that? I mean, I have not had the opportunity to read it. What's the kind of storyline? Where did that source? Was that like, a telling of your growing up, or where did you?
Yeah, it was. I mean, it's sort of. So when I started on American Born Chinese, I'd been doing comics for like 5 or 6 years, and I'd had all of these stories with Asian American protagonists, but their cultural identity, their cultural heritage never played a big part in the story. And because my own cultural heritage is such a big part of how I find my place in the world, I knew I wanted to do some kind of a story where that was the central focus. So that's what American Born Chinese is. It's 3 different storylines. One is about the Monkey King, who's this really popular Chinese legendary figure. One is about a young Chinese American boy growing up in a predominantly white neighborhood, and for that one I pulled a lot from my own childhood, even though it's fiction. And then the last story is it's by far the most controversial, but basically the main character is this guy named Cousin Chinky, who is a living, breathing embodiment of negative Chinese American stereotypes.
Oh wow!
He's
So
like
just
got bright yellow skin and super slanted eyes and buck teeth and all that.
taking it like off the deep end kind of thing to
Yeah.
show the gosh. You're selling me. I can hear just through the passion and the way that you talk about these stories that you've been involved with, makes me want to just open my wallet and run to the comic book store and get these books, because I mean you're the best salesperson for your own comics, because you really, really, truly believe in what you're doing, whether it's the comics in education, the stories in American Born Chinese, the Green Turtle. I'm excited about all of it. I mean, I want to go learn.
Man. I appreciate
Yeah,
that.
it's interesting because a lot of people we talk to, a lot of people in the comics industries, the bigger names, the Marvels and the DCs, like they're all very talented people working on all that stuff, but a lot of it is contract work, somebody else's stuff that they're doing contributing a story or artwork to. But I think there's a sort of different sense when it's your own stuff that you're putting out there. Like there's more of you in it, and I think sometimes that really shines through.
Yeah, I feel really lucky that so far, at least, I haven't yet had to take a job that I haven't been excited about. Even the most licensee thing that I've done so far is the Airbender book, and I'm such a huge fan of that it was an honor. It was a huge honor to be able to work on that. So up until now, I've just been lucky. Part of that is also, I feel like, because I keep a day job. That's one of the reasons why I'm really reluctant to let go of this. At this point, I'm only averaging maybe 20 hours a week at my day job, but I'm really reluctant to let it go because I'm worried if I let that go, I'm gonna have to take on this comic work that I'm not passionate about, that I don't really feel.
Yeah, that seems like a really fine tightrope to have to walk.
Yeah.
Do you have any plans or aspirations of doing any more like crossover stuff between the computer science stuff and the comic stuff, like with future projects, like I mean, similar to how you have your factoring lessons, like some sort of interactive media experience that uses both technology and creative writing.
Yes, yes. I'm actually working on a project right now that is explicitly about computer science. It's a comic book project for middle grade readers, and we're still in the early stages of it. So I just finished the script for the first book. We've signed on to do 3, and that'll be my first foray into well, I guess maybe not the first, but the first time I'm working with the publisher doing explicitly educational comics. So we're exploring some digital stuff for that too. Maybe a tie-in with some kind of app or something, but nothing's concrete yet.
What about like outside of educational stuff? I mean, like Avatar, is so. I mean, it was originally a cartoon, an animated series, and like you kind of taking it back to a more basic state in graphic novels. Like, what have you ever considered like seeing if they want to take it forward and doing some sort of like interactive digital experience kind of thing?
Yeah, I've talked to some folks about adapting some of my own comics into other formats, into either film or into video games. Nothing's ever really come out of it though. Like I'm still in some ongoing conversations about that. I have some friends who've had much more deep dealings with Hollywood, and it sounds like it's not always super fun.
Right.
It sounds like the stories that they tell me just make me think, oh, I don't know if I want to get too deep into that.
Maybe I have second thoughts about this.
Yeah. I mean, it looks super fun from the outside, but
Right.
when you get the inside scoop, sometimes it doesn't seem so hot.
My background's in computer science, so like the computer science and comics, like I'm always like excited about seeing somebody trying to put them together somehow, and like it's like I wonder what would happen if somebody made some sort of interactive comic experience thing, based on computers and whatnot.
Well, you should, after we're done here, give me your address. I'll send you my next project when it's ready. But if you're into interactive comics from like a math, computer science angle, have you ever checked out the work of Jason Shiga? Do you know who he is? Have you heard of him?
No.
So
how do you spell that?
Shiga is Shiga, and he does a bunch of comics. He's a Bay Area cartoonist, so we kind of came up in the industry together. And he did a book through Abrams, who's the publisher of the Diary of a Wimpy Kid books.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, he did a book called Meanwhile, which is amazing. It's a choose your own adventure comic, and it's kind of like
that sounds awesome.
A maze and a comic got together and had a baby. That's what
I'm interested already.
I'm in.
Yeah, and it's like the craziest story you've ever read. It's like it's not just that the format is interesting, but the story itself is really crazy. It's all about time travel and Schrodinger's cat and probabilities and all this crazy stuff.
We got to get him on here too.
No, he's great. He's great, and he's also kind of crazy. He's like slightly nuts.
He'll fit right in with us.
Yeah, yeah. But you should check that out if you're into like computer science and interactive comics.
Hell yeah, we'll definitely check that out.
Thank you.
Yeah. Absolutely. I have okay. So from being in the industry and you're a writer, you're obviously, like I said before, very passionate about the entire medium of comics and everything that comes with that, from animated and film and all that. How do you feel about all of the the Marvel Cinematic Universe, the DC films, the TV shows that are out now? Where do you stand on all that stuff? Do you keep up with that? Do you like it? Do you not like it as much as the written form? Or
I like it all. As a geek, I kind of like it all. I'm kind of shocked that the Marvel movies are so good. I haven't seen the new Captain America one, but I've heard it's amazing. I've heard it's absolutely amazing. But I just think, when I was a kid, when I was a kid growing up reading these Marvel comics, I would dream about having big screen versions of these stories, right? And I would also dream about having Lego sets. I feel like the fact that there are Marvel superhero Lego sets now, that's something that I literally had a dream about when I was in 3rd grade or 4th grade.
I wish.
So
I wish
just-
we were on camera right now because
I
I
have 2 of
literally
them within
have.
arm's reach right here.
I literally have just a few months ago. My girlfriend bought me a Batman Lego alarm clock, and it's like a foot tall, and
Oh
it's
my
like
God.
a giant Lego person dressed like Batman with an alarm clock under in his stomach underneath the bat symbol.
That sounds
and
amazing.
it is the coolest. We found out there's a Lego store at a mall, maybe 15 minutes from where we're at, and it's all Legos, nothing but the whole store, nothing but Legos. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah, it's crazy
Just
now.
now
I
found
just
that?
feel like the kids these days, they don't know how good they got it. They're basically living in my dream. The dream that I had when I was in 3rd grade, they're living inside of
Everything
it now.
we wanted as
Yeah.
children.
Yeah, it now exists. You know, like Star Wars Legos, that was another thing. I would
Oh, I
have loved to
know.
have Star Wars Legos when I was a kid. So I definitely love it all. You know, when I was a kid, I actually really didn't like DC. I just thought DC was stupid. You know, I thought Marvel had all the awesome characters and the awesome stories, and DC had all these characters with the word "lad" in their names, and I thought those were the stupidest
They
things.
did, actually.
But what turned me on DC was those Bruce Timm cartoons. I really think that those Bruce Timm cartoons they took all of the best pieces of this entire universe and they made it into an amazing cartoon series. So that's what turned me into a DC fan.
And you know, Marvel's got an Iron Lad now, so.
Yeah, Marvel's got an Iron Lad. Yeah. But it's okay because Aqualad actually turned out to be a really amazing character in Young Justice.
And then they canceled that show. And
Yeah, then they canceled it.
Yeah.
Well, it was
Put on
too awesome
Teen
to
Titans
exist. Yeah.
How did you get your start originally? Like, at what point, did you, when you were young, just a little short Gene Yang running around, like, did you write down stories and start drawing comic book hero? Like, when did you realize, like, this is, man, I can do this? Like,
Well, I started doing comics in the 5th grade. I had a friend named Jeremy, and by then he had actually been collecting comics for years and years and years. So he had long boxes under his bed, and we just started making comics together. So we would brainstorm stories. I would do all the pencils. He would do all the inks. We'd give these stories to his mom, who would take them to her work and sneak photocopies for us.
what? So wait a minute, you at 5th grade, hold on a second here. So at 5th grade, you've got a full-blown production system going on here. Pencils,
Oh yeah, through
inks,
Jeremy's mom.
and
Yeah,
copying.
through Jeremy's mom. Yeah.
Do you still
Well,
have these? Do you still have
I
copies
think-
of these?
I think there's some at my parents' house.
Oh, that's
I think
so
there's some at
awesome.
my parents' house. Yeah, and I'm sure Jeremy has some too. So we're still in touch. He's not involved in comics anymore at all. He's a radiologist now. So he actually, has
Quite the shift.
Yeah. yeah. He makes so much money he could probably buy me if he wanted to. But that's
How
what
much
we would do when we were in 5th grade. We'd make all these amazing comics. Well, we thought they were amazing. They probably weren't that amazing.
That's
but-
got to be great. That's got to be
was
great to,
fun.
like, once every decade, if you will, or 5 years or whatever, just go back and look at that and be like, that's where it all started. That's pretty cool that you still have a piece, like that cornerstone piece of your history in the comic book industry still exists. Even if you don't have it, he's got it, or somebody has it. That's so
yeah,
cool.
I think there are copies of it around somewhere, or his mom has them, or something.
Still
But
posted on
but
the
it was fun.
fridge.
It was super fun. It was just I just think that that's one of my favorite things about the comic book world is that line between the reader and the creator, the amateur and the pro, is just very thin and it's very permeable. From the very beginning in the industry it was like that. That we latched on to convention culture pretty early, so we brought readers and creators physically together. I think it was pretty unique in our industry pretty early on. And then that jump from reader to creator, you just draw a comic and there you go. Half of the people who call ourselves pros in comics don't make full-time livings doing what we do. So
It's so it's so interesting. I mean, especially for us as being, through and through comic book fans and just nerds to the heart. I mean, it's so interesting hearing you guys. When I say you guys, I'm talking creators, writers, artists. Talk about how the industry works and like the barrier for entry being some. Not even, it's not like, well, you have to go talk to this guy and then you have to go talk. It's just this, ever evolving, you never really know. And then all of a sudden it just kind of happens, so to speak.
Complain about the right thing and
yeah, right.
Place on time. That's right. That's right.
I mean, we've talked to, we've had guests on our show on both ends of the spectrum, very seasoned, creators like Bob Hall and Neil Adams, and then on the opposite end we've had like people that are kind of up and coming like Yale Stewart, who has a huge following on Facebook but is just kind of sneaking into getting to work with like the DC stuff, the licensed DC stuff. So it's really interesting to kind of piece this whole thing together as far as like how you get from the new person trying to find their way, and then the seasoned veteran trying to get to that legendary status, if you will.
Yeah.
We're hoping
some way
that we can sneak in there somehow.
Well, I don't think
filling up if they need ink wells filled or whatever.
Water boys. I don't know if you have water boys or back rub people.
I'll fill Gatorade cups up.
Back rub people. You want to be a back rub guy?
Water boy.
Yeah.
Well, I just one of the things about the comic book industry is that in traditional books, self-publishing has like this stigma to it. You tell somebody you're a self-published author, and there's like a losery aura. But in comics, it is not like that at all. In comics, self-publishing is sort of it's seen as a legitimate way to get into the business. Jeff Smith, the creator of Bones, started as a self-publisher. Dave Sim, who did Cerebus, was self-published his entire career. So many of us started as self-publishers that it's nice. It's nice to have that as a diving board into the industry.
It's almost opposite of the novel type of thing, where in comic books it shows the go-getter, quote unquote, attitude versus like, oh, you're a loser, you can't get published by another company. It's this, well, screw it, I don't need another company, I'm going to do it myself. Like
it's like indie cred.
Yeah,
that's right.
Exactly.
That's right. Yeah. And I think it just stems back to like underground comics, the whole underground ethos of not relying on gatekeepers. It's a big part of what the industry is.
So you mentioned
comic book people are hipsters at heart.
That's right.
So you mentioned briefly your acceptance of the con culture. Do you still participate in a lot of comic book conventions? Do you just do a few local ones, or?
I was just at WonderCon in Anaheim.
Oh, really?
This past weekend. Yeah, it was fun. It was great. I try to go to San Diego every year, and I try to do some local conventions as well. So I really like it. It's something that I've been doing since I was a kid, and I've been on both sides of the table. So it's a lot of fun.
We got to get you
out of California.
Yeah, we got to get you out here, out east some, because we got we're here in Ohio and New York as we're coming from.
I haven't gone to the New York Comic Con, but I've heard amazing things about it. My publisher goes every year, but I haven't yet made my way out there yet. So hope to someday.
Well, before we wrap things up here in just a little bit, is there anything that you want to get out there to anybody that might be listening to this and tell them to go check something out that you're working on, or anything that we haven't covered, anything that you self-promote? Go for it.
Well, I had a book come out last year called Boxers and Saints, which is a 2-volume graphic novel all about the Boxer Rebellion, this war that was fought on Chinese soil in the year 1900. And the two sides of the war were, on one side it was the European soldiers, European missionaries, and the Chinese Christians, and on the other side it was this ragtag army of these teenagers, these Chinese teenagers living out in the farmlands, who believed that they could call the Chinese gods down from the skies, and these Chinese gods would possess their bodies, and give them superpowers. So it was I find this whole war fascinating for all sorts of different reasons. but not the least of which is that these young men, we call them boxers now, but they were kind of like modern day geeks. What they would do is they would watch these stories of their favorite heroes as Chinese operas, and then they became so attached to these heroes that they wanted to become them. So for modern day geeks, we cosplay our favorite heroes, but for these young men, they came up with this mystical ritual that they believed would transform them into these heroes. But in my research in the Boxer Rebellion, I just couldn't decide which side of this war I felt more attached to, felt more sympathetic to, and that's why Boxers and Saints is actually 2 volumes. So the good guys in one volume are the bad guys in the other. So it tells the story of the
both
two
sides.
perspectives. Both sides. Yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's a really awesome way to do it.
Yeah.
Well,
I was
thanks.
going to say that's pretty cool. I love history, and if I could find a comic book, especially one based upon war or military history, that's amazing. I'm definitely gonna have to look for that one.
Where do we find
it?
Pick
that up.
Well, it should be. You should be able to get it through Amazon or through your local comic book store or bookstore.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, my publisher actually. I feel I work with both Dark Horse for the Airbender comics and First Second Books, who put out American Born Chinese and Boxers and Saints. They put out some really awesome books lately. I read this biography of Andre the Giant. It's called Andre the Giant, by a guy named Box Brown. You should check that out too. If you ever watched.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
I don't think you could grow up when we were kids
Right.
and not watch
that's right.
wrestling.
Yeah, it's a great book.
Or at least Princess Bride.
Just by a quick roll call, how many people here, be honest, participating in this podcast right now, as a child, body slammed a pillow on their bed?
I had 2 sisters. I just
No,
body
I
slammed
didn't. I
them.
body slammed my brother.
Oh well, I didn't have brothers and sisters, so I used a pillow.
Oh, okay.
I had the wrestling buddies when I was growing up.
I had one of those too.
Oh.
Yeah.
I had like a
Choke
4 foot tall He-Man that I used to beat the shit out of all the time. It was like a big stuffed one. It was
That sounds awesome. Yeah, I had a little brother. Instead of a stuffed He-Man, I had a little brother.
Oh, that's fantastic. Well, Gene, Mr. Yang, we really, really, honestly, we appreciate you taking time out of your really busy schedule to come on here and kind of shoot the shit with us and fill us in on your career and where you've been and especially the comics and education thing was very fascinating for me. I really appreciate it. I'm sure everyone else listening and the guys here participating with us appreciate it. That's about it. That's we're about out of time today. Signing out. I'm Fox 2. We got Topher.
Anybody want a peanut?
The whole effing Brian.
I really hate allergy season.
The Pirate.
see you guys.
And our honored guest, Gene Luen Yang.
Thank you for having me on. It was a blast.
Absolutely.